Hi, I'm Steve, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to make kombucha. So kombucha, in case you don't know, it's K-O-M-B-U-C-H-A, and some people pronounce it kombucha. Either way is fine. It is a fermented sweet tea, and it supposedly has a lot of beneficial health effects, and it may also have some detrimental ones, so you'll want to be careful and cautious when you first start with it. There are as many ways to make kombucha as there are people out on YouTube, so you can certainly look at other videos and find out other methods of doing it. My method works for me, and I've combined several that I've seen. I'm going to do what is referred to as a double fermentation. So some people do single fermentation. I do a double fermentation. So we're going to get started just by looking at what you need in order to make some kombucha, and then I'll give you some ideas along the way. So kombucha is made by fermenting sweet tea, either black or green tea, with what is called, some people call it a mushroom, but it's actually a SCOBY, which stands for symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast. And it looks kind of like a white rubbery disc when it's fully grown. And it is the same thing that's used in making vinegars and those sorts of things. And in fact, kombucha after its first fermentation will taste a lot like vinegar because there is a lot of acetic acid in it. So this is how I grow mine. It grows in the dark, and I have a large mason jar. This one holds about, I think, 2 gallons. If it's full, I don't fill it all the way to the top. You keep it covered with, I like to use a coffee filter. Some people use dish rags or something like that. You want to avoid using something thin like cheesecloth, because I have seen people get fruit fly larvae, or maggots is the uncharming word to use, in their kombucha if they use cheesecloth because the holes are too big. So you want either a coffee filter or something that has very thick fabric that flies would not be able to get into, but air would still be able to penetrate. Then you're going to need something during the process to put your SCOBY in, so you can cover it with some of the kombucha and keep it moist. So I usually use a small bowl, and I'll put the plate over top of that to just keep any flies or anything out while I'm going through the process. You're going to need something to do your second fermentation in. So your first fermentation was in the large jar. Second fermentation is usually done in small jars. I like to use these swing top beer, some people call them Grolsch bottles or beer bottles. You can use just about anything. We got this one from apple cider that was sparkling cider. You can use vinegar bottles. I always have those around. Anything that has a screw cap, so you can even use water bottles, or like Gatorade bottles also work. You're going to need some white sugar. You can probably use natural sugar. I usually use the plain old white sugar, and you'll need some measuring cups. You'll need some sort of fruit juice to put in it for the second fermentation. My wife and I like lemon lime, so that's what I'm going to show tonight, but I also have used strawberries and blueberries, and you pretty much any kind of fruit you can think of you can use. And one of the things you'll have to consider is how much sugar is in that fruit. So we'll talk about that when we get to that part of the process. It's nice to have a big pitcher for pouring the kombucha into the bottles. And you'll need tea. I use Davidson's gunpowder green tea. I sometimes also use black tea, and you can use the cheapest tea bags you can find or the cheapest loose tea you can find. Anything will work. You'll need either a tea infuser or something to steep your tea A couple of nice to haves are one of these teapots that give you the temperatures for the different types of tea. So we're going to use green tea at 175 degrees. That's optimal steeping temperature for green tea, and it has all the other ones. These are nice, and it heats up your water real fast. It's also nice to have a bottle brush for cleaning your bottles, but not really necessary. I usually throw mine in the dishwasher. So SCOBY, as the name indicates, has bacteria and yeast in it. So we want to keep them pretty much the same colonies that they start out with. So we want to keep our hands and all the equipment we're going to be used clean. So first thing I'm going to do is wash my hands real good, try to get them as clean as you can. I used to work in a lab, so I know about bacteria and stuff that comes off your hands. It can be fairly nasty. It's not the stuff you want in your kombucha. So clean hands, and you can wash them several times during the process. So kombucha is a cycle, so you can really start the process wherever you want. I'm going to arbitrarily say that we're starting the process at the point at which this has been fermented for about a full week, so seven or 8 days. You'll find your sweet spot, but usually no less than 5 days, and probably no more than 2 weeks. But 7-8 days seems to work best for me. And when you take the lid off it, I can already smell it because this is a porous coffee filter. It smells like vinegar, and it should be, if it's processed all the way, it should smell fairly vinegary. And what I'm going to do is take a plastic spoon. You usually want to use plastic or glass for kombucha. You don't really want to use metal if you can avoid it. So just get this under there and try to avoid touching it. You may have to if it won't come out, but I try not to use my hands as much as possible. I'm going to throw it in this bowl, and I'm going to take some of the kombucha from the first fermentation and just pour it right on it to keep it moist. And we'll use that later on in the process as well. And then I'm just going to put a lid on that because it's going to take us a while to get back to needing that. We don't want any flies or whatever else, dust to fall in it. So that's the first part. Now, we're going to add some sugar to this, and I use about a ½ a cup per gallon. I have a little bit more than a gallon here, but I'm just going to put a ½ a cup because I know that my lemon juice and lime juice is going to have sugar in it as well. And this is my favorite part of the whole process because when you put the sugar in, it activates the yeast, and they start automatically start feeding on it and making gases. So you can see that's foaming up nicely. We'll just stir that in, dissolve all that sugar. Don't worry if you see little bits of the SCOBY floating in there. We're going to filter all that out in one of the next steps. So as I said, I'm going to be making lemon lime tonight, which is my wife and I's favorite flavor. And for that you'll need 1 lemon and 2 limes. And I'm just going to cut them in half and juice them. We have a really good citrus reamer here that works very quickly. So the 1 lemon made about a little over 1/3 of a cup of juice, and we're going to pour that right into the kombucha. And we'll juice the limes the same way. And again, we have about 1/3 of a cup of juice from the 2 limes. We'll pour that directly in. And we'll give all that a good stir. Now we've got the kombucha, we've got a 1/2 cup of sugar, and we've got the juice from 1 lemon and 2 limes. And we've mixed it well. We're going to strain it into a big pitcher through a small plastic strainer like this one. And it does tend to clog up, so we may have to stir it a few times once the pulp starts to collect. But at first it'll go through pretty quickly, and then it starts to slow down. While I'm doing this, I can tell you that there's a lot of health benefits attributed to kombucha. It is full of antioxidants depending upon what fruits you put in it. And the green tea is full of antioxidants. It has vitamins B complex and C, so it's good from that respect. It's supposed to be good for people who have stomach issues, such as acid reflux or those sorts of things. These are all claims. I don't think any of them have ever been tested in a clinic, so buyer beware. It's up to you to decide whether you're seeing these health benefits. And it's also good to be aware that it does include fungus, because yeasts are fungus, and bacteria. So when you first start this, you might want to see how you react to it. You may want to start with just a small amount and wait a day and see, do I feel better or do I feel worse after I do this? If you feel okay, take a little bit more. My wife and I generally drink 8 ounces a day, but we worked up to that. We started with 2 and then 4 just to see how we were reacting to it. And we were both perfectly fine. And so we feel like 8 ounces a day is a good amount to use. So now I've got 64 ounces here that has been strained. And I'm going to start pouring it into bottles. So I like these swing top beer bottles the best, so I'm going to start with those and fill up as many of those as I can. We have a set of 6 of them. I probably should get some more. They're fairly inexpensive on Amazon. These are 16-ounce bottles, so 1 bottle I can open for my wife and I, and we'll drink it in 1 day, which is nice because after the second fermentation it's nice and fizzy, so it's actually, the lemon lime tastes almost like a Sprite or 7-Up, only not as sweet, but it definitely gives you that feeling of like a soda pop. As I said, you can use any variety of airtight containers for the second fermentation. These are nice. These are going to sit in a dark closet for 5 days. I do my second fermentation for 5 days, sometimes 4 days, depending upon what fruit is in it. The sugarier the fruit, so like strawberries and blueberries, you're going to get much more fizzy, and you may not want to ferment it quite as long because it can really get so fizzy that it comes out of the bottle when you open it up. Lemon lime doesn't quite get that fizzy, but it's very refreshing to drink. We after the second fermentation, refrigerate it, and then it keeps for a good long time. We usually drink it all up within a week, but you could probably keep it for a few weeks and it would be fine. You'll see that it does continue to grow yeast and small scobies in the top of them, depending upon how long they've been in the second fermentation, and that's fine. You can either use those to share with people who also want to start a kombucha SCOBY, or you can just throw them out or strain them out. Some people even eat them. I think they're kind of gross, but it's up to you. If you drip any down the sides, it's a good idea to wipe them off, just because as you're going to be in a closet for about 4 or 5 days and you don't want to attract any insects. I usually just give all of mine a quick wipe just to make sure. I'm going to put the remaining kombucha in an official, the kombucha bar bottle. So we have a store in town that actually makes kombucha. It's very good, it's very tasty. It's a little expensive. It's about, this one jug would cost you about $15. That's why we started making our own. But she's been very helpful in that we bought a bottle of this and grew our own SCOBY from a bottle that we bought there. So I'll in a future video teach you how to grow your own SCOBY, but you can do it from existing kombucha, so you can buy some and then grow your own SCOBY to get started. Or you can take a split from somebody else who has one that you know. Just wipe the outside of them in case you got any spilled down the outside. And then you're going to store them in a dark closet for room temperature closet for 4 or 5 days for the second fermentation. Now we're going to start the first fermentation. So what we do is take our tea kettle and we're going to fill it up. It holds about 1.7 liters. So we'll go ahead and fill that up right to the top. You can use tap water, you can use filtered water, you can use any kind of bottled water if you think that's better. We always use tap water and it's perfectly fine. Our tap water comes out of a well here locally, so it's pretty good tasting. We'll set that to green tea mode and start it. And that's going to take about 5 minutes to boil or so. Or to reach temperature, right? Don't actually boil it. So while it's we're waiting for that to boil, we're going to go ahead and wash our jar. Now some people will tell you, you'll read places that, oh, they never wash their jars because it helps to start the next cycle. That's fine if you want to do that. As I said, I used to work in a lab. We like to start with everything clean. So I always start with nice clean jars and utensils, and that seems to work well for us. And we're going to use the fluid that we put on top of the SCOBY as the starter anyway, so that shouldn't really be an issue. I'll just give it a good washing with regular soap and water and try to get as much of the soap out as you can. You can use cold or hot water. I usually use hot water, but make sure that your glass cools down before you ever put your SCOBY in it. Now we're going to get our tea ready, so I just open up my loose tea and I'm going to pull out maybe about 2 tablespoons or so, maybe a little bit more, just so this infuser has about a quarter filled on the bottom. You don't need too much because it's going to expand when the water hits it, and it'll give you a nice dark tea. We're going to steep it, because we're using half as much water, we're going to steep it a little longer so it gets really dark, and then we'll later dilute it with cold water and ice to bring the temperature down. I'm going to cover my infuser with the coffee filter that I took off of the jar earlier, and use the same rubber band that I'll keep it on the jar later, just to keep it on the infuser. So my tea kettle just beeped saying that it's up to 175 degrees, and this one's nice because it'll keep it there until you go ahead and use it. I'm going to pour my tea kettle right into my jar that has the green tea and the infuser. You can use any type of infuser that you want, and you can use tea bags, work perfectly fine. If I'm using tea bags, I usually put about 5 bags to make a gallon of kombucha, but you can adjust that to your own liking. And once I've got all the water in there, I'm going to let it steep for about 6 minutes, maybe a long 6 minutes, just so you get a nice dark tea. And I do actually time it. Over there is our kefir fermenting. We ferment a lot of stuff here. We make sourdough bread as well. We just like fermented things. In another video I'll talk about how to make kefir, which is also good. I drink that every morning as a smoothie, and it's supposed to have lots of health benefits, and my wife and I have both been drinking that for about 4 years. And through the magic of video, we're now almost at the end of our 6 minutes. So remember, this is good and hot still. So I'm going to take our large spoon and retrieve the infuser. Try to drain as much tea out of it as I can. You can see that the tea is pretty good and dark, but it's only half the volume, so we will go ahead and add the rest of the volume to cool it down after we've added sugar. So I'll be making just over a gallon of kombucha, so I want to put in, usually put a cup of sugar per gallon. So I'll put a little two healthy half cups here. A lot of people worry about the calories, but actually the yeast and the bacteria chew up the sugars pretty good and turn it into acetic acid and a little bit of alcohol. Alcohol content, they say, is about 0.5%, which would be similar to like if you were going to drink an O'Doul's or something. That would be 0.5%. It can go higher if you leave your fermentation go longer. Mine, you can taste that there's a little bit of alcohol in it, but I think it's fairly low. So you want to put that sugar in while this is still hot and get it fully dissolved. And I'll stir it around for a while, make sure that it's all dissolved. And if you were to taste this right now, it would be very sweet tea. Once the sugar is dissolved, I'll go ahead and add some ice to it to cool it down a bit. We're going to want our final volume to be about 5 quarts, and that's going to include the extra fluid that is on top of the SCOBY right now, and water that we'll throw in. We have some chilled filter water in the refrigerator. I'll use that just to get the temperature down more. You don't want to put your SCOBY in hot liquid because that'll kill your bacteria and yeast, so you want it to be pretty close to room temperature. It can be a little bit warmer, but it's happiest at room temperature. So a gallon is 128 ounces. These are in ounces on the side. I'm going to go up to about 140 with the cold water. Okay, we've kept our SCOBY covered all that time, and actually I want to wash my hands before I touch it. I don't usually touch it, but I will tonight so I can show it to you. So always wash your hands. We're going to take the lid off, and there it is, sitting ready to go. So you always want to put the same side up. So this is the outside, and then this is the inside. You can see that it does have some discoloration from the tea. It also is in layers, so you can peel off these layers. If a bottom layer is looking like yucky, you can peel it off and expose the layer above, and you can give a layer to a friend who wants to make kombucha. It will start very quickly for them. Otherwise, you can grow your own SCOBY from some actual kombucha. So I'm just going to put this right in our jar. As I said, same side up each time. And this fluid that it was sitting in goes right back in, and that will kickstart the process. And you're all set. Okay, I have a fresh coffee filter I'm going to put on top, and just make sure it covers the entire lid, and put a rubber band around it. Make sure there's no gaps. And a couple of things I want to mention about the SCOBY. It should be a clean white color like that. If you're using black tea, it will be a bit darker than I have here. If you see a fungus growing on it, which happens a lot of times when they're new, if it's a lighter color like a blue, that may be okay. Watch it and make sure if you get a red fungus or anything like that, or a dark yellow fungus, you want to just throw it away and start over again. You've got some bad characters on there, so don't take a chance, because they can produce toxic substances that might cause you to have a reaction. So when in doubt, just throw out your SCOBY and start fresh. That hasn't happened to me. I started this one about half a year ago, and it's still good. I did have one before that it just wasn't looking right, so I threw it away and started again. And I will put the jar in the same dark closet. That'll be in there for 7 or 8 days, whereas the second fermentation goes for about 4 or 5 days, and then you put those in the refrigerator. Today I made lemon lime kombucha for you. We last week made strawberry blueberry, which came out really good. You can see in the bottom there's a lot of sediment. We usually strain that out before drinking it. A lot of it is yeast, and if you have a larger container, you will see that a SCOBY forms on the top, which you can then use for more kombucha. So I hope this video has helped, and I hope you've learned a few things. If you've got any ideas for me or questions, put them in the comments below. Also, give me a like and a share if you like this video, and thanks for watching.